This is Dennis Sanders. I'm the pastor of First Christian Church of St. Paul, Disciples of Christ, located in Roseville, Minnesota. And welcome. So during the season of Lent, we are going to be focusing on our theme. Then these videos will take on the theme that we've been following, which is unfinished, discerning God's call in the not yet. And today we want to look at John 3, 1 through 17. A pretty well-known passage where Jesus talks to Nicodemus. Now, maybe you've heard the phrase one time or another, I'm just asking questions. Now, usually the person that is saying that is not the person that is asking questions. It's usually someone else that's kind of critiquing or condemning the other person because they think that the questions that are being asked are not genuine. They are actually being somewhat deceitful, that they have an ulterior motive. Now, Nicodemus is a Pharisee, a religious leader. And the Pharisees, if you have read any of the Gospels, had a fraught relationship with Jesus. So you might think that Nicodemus is coming to Jesus to just ask questions. But that's not the case. Nicodemus really does have questions. He knows a lot about the faith. He is a teacher of the law. But this Jesus stumps him. He's curious who this Jesus is all about. And he really does have questions about Jesus. Nicodemus is open, and he wants to understand Jesus. And Jesus, being Jesus, doesn't make it easy. Jesus does provide answers to his questions, but they aren't clear. At least they're not to Nicodemus. And so Nicodemus is even asking more questions. He doesn't understand, what does it mean about this whole born again thing, or born from above? What does that mean? I'm an old man. I can't be expected to go back into my mother's womb. Now, some scholars and others kind of look down on Nicodemus because he couldn't figure this out. Or maybe they think that because he's a Pharisee, well, really, his questions weren't so innocent. But let's be honest here, that if we were in Nicodemus' shoes, I don't know if we would be able to understand what Jesus was talking about either. And if we were being even more honest, I think that sometimes even today, we still don't always understand what Jesus is talking about. Questions are a part of faith. To begin to even believe, to begin to even have faith in Jesus, you got to ask questions. Questions like, who is Jesus? What is Jesus to us? What does it mean to be born again? Nicodemus should not be faulted for asking questions about something that he didn't understand. And as those questions show, he really didn't understand. Now, that said, we have to remember that getting answers only takes us so far. In chapter 4, the following chapter, Jesus has an encounter with this woman at the well, a Samaritan woman. And she has lots of questions too, and she's struggling to understand. But she moves from having those questions, and she still has questions, to telling others about Jesus. She was able to move to faith even though she did not have all the answers. The Christian life really is not one about getting answers. In some ways, sometimes it's about living with the answers that we get from God, and sometimes there are answers that we struggle to understand. The problem with the Pharisees was that they believed that they had all the answers and that they knew the answers. They weren't curious. In fact, they stopped being curious because, of course, they had the answers. Why do they need to be curious? But Nicodemus was different because he was curious. He didn't understand something. He wasn't satisfied with the answers that he had. But he also didn't get an easy answer from Jesus. After a while, Jesus gives those answers, but they aren't always easily accessible. And after a while, we have to kind of deal with the answers, with what we have, and move from kind of a questioning stance to faith. And faith doesn't mean we have all the answers. In fact, we never have all the answers. When I was growing up, there was a hymn that we used to sing that was called, "We'll Understand It Better By and By." And the chorus goes somewhat like this: "By and by, when the morning comes, when all the saints of God are gathered home, we'll tell the story of how we've overcome, and we'll understand it better by and by." Now later in the book of John, we see Nicodemus again. He's defending Jesus. And even later, after Jesus is crucified and died, he works with another Pharisee, to offer a place for Jesus to be buried. I'm going to guess that he still had questions, and he probably still is wrestling with the answers that Jesus gave. But somehow, little by little, this man had become a follower of Jesus, had become a disciple. He didn't have all the answers, but he was able to move into faith and believe that there was something to this man. We all deal with our own questions, whether we have been Christians for many years or whether even we aren't Christians. And we ask those questions to God. And sometimes we struggle with how God answers. But I pray that we can be like Nicodemus, that we can be open to asking those questions and be honest when we don't understand. And maybe over time, we will understand it better by and by. Take care, church. Godspeed, and I'll see you soon.